The last time you tore a leaf off a plant, snapped a basil stem, ripped open a bag of lettuce, ran a mower across your lawn, you assumed nothing was happening on the other end of it. Something was happening. Within about 2 seconds, that plant knew it had been injured. It flooded its own body with an electrical alarm using the exact same chemical your brain uses to think. It started manufacturing poison, and it released a distress signal into the air, one you have smelled 1,000 times and always thought of as the smell of summer. Every plant you have ever eaten registered the moment you began eating it. So, do they feel it? The answer changes everything we think we know about pain, about intelligence, and about the line we've drawn between the things that suffer and the things that don't. Let's start with the injury itself, because that's the part scientists can now literally watch happen. In 2018, a team led by Masatsugu Toyota, working in Simon Gilroy's lab at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, published a study in the journal Science. They engineered plants to glow, a fluorescent protein that lights up whenever calcium floods into a cell. Then they put a cabbage caterpillar on a leaf and filmed what happened. What they saw looks disturbingly like a nervous system firing. The instant the caterpillar bites, a wave of light erupts from the wound and races out through the plant. Not slowly, about 1 millimeter per second, spreading down the stem and out into leaves on the far side of the plant in roughly 2 minutes. And in those untouched leaves nothing has laid a mouth on, defense hormones spike within minutes of the wave arriving. The plant has told itself everywhere that it is under attack. Here's the part that should stop you. The chemical that sets off that wave is glutamate. Glutamate is the most common excitatory neurotransmitter in the human brain. It is a huge part of how your neurons talk to each other, and plants detect it using proteins called glutamate receptor light channels, genes that are evolutionary relatives of the receptors firing inside your head right now as you listen to this. And plants don't only signal inward, they signal outward into the air. That smell of fresh cut grass, the one that sells candles and lawnmowers. It's a class of compounds called green leaf volatiles, mostly one called cis-3-hexanol. Dumped into the air the instant plant cells rupture. Your nose is absurdly sensitive to it. You can detect it at about a quarter of 1 part per billion. And it isn't a pleasant byproduct, it's a wound response. It helps sterilize damaged tissue. It summons predatory insects that eat the things eating the plant, and it drifts to neighbors. You have been smelling plant injury your entire life and calling it a nice day. And when that message lands, it can kill. In the 1980s, game ranchers in the Transvaal region of South Africa kept finding kudu, a big striped antelope dead in the grass. No wounds, no predators, no disease. Roughly 3,000 of them died. Zoologist Wouter van Hoven traced it back to the trees. Drought had crowded the kudu onto the acacias, and the overbrowsed trees responded by pumping tannins into their leaves until the leaves were lethal. But Van Hoven found something worse. The chewed acacias released ethylene gas that drifted as far as 50 yards, and downwind trees that had not been touched by anything began raising their own tannin levels within 5 to 10 minutes. The kudu were walking into a defense that was being coordinated ahead of them. That is not a plant sitting still and taking it. That is a plant fighting back and warning the neighbors. Now, some of you are thinking that's just chemistry, a reflex. Your car alarm goes off when somebody bumps the bumper, and nobody thinks the car is in agony. Fair. It's a completely reasonable objection, and for most of the last century, it was the mainstream scientific position. So let me hand you the harder evidence. Explain what happens when you play a plant a recording. In 2014, Heidi Apple and Rex Cocroft at the University of Missouri published a study in the journal Ecologia. They recorded the tiny vibrations a caterpillar makes while chewing a leaf. Then they played those vibrations back to Arabidopsis plants that had never encountered a caterpillar in their lives. No insect, no damage, no chemicals, just the movement of the leaf. Those plants preloaded their weapons. When real caterpillars were finally put on them, the pre-exposed plants produced significantly more glucosinolates, the mustard oil compounds that make leaves taste foul, than plants that had been sitting in silence. And here's the detail that makes it more than a reflex. It discriminated. The plants did not react that way to the vibrations of wind. They did not react to the songs of harmless insects. They reacted to the specific signature of being eaten. That isn't a trigger being tripped. That's recognition. Then, the same year, in the same journal, biologist Monica Galliano published something stranger. She worked with Mimosa pudica, the sensitive plant, the one whose leaves snap shut the second you touch them. She built a rig that dropped potted mimosas 15 centimeters onto foam. Startling but completely harmless. The first drops, every leaf slammed shut, but after a handful of drops, some plants stopped bothering. After 60, they had essentially stopped folding at all, while still folding instantly when she shook them a different way. So they weren't tired, and they weren't broken. They had learned that this particular event meant nothing. Then she left them alone for a month and dropped them again. They remembered, and the plants living in low light learned faster and held the memory longer, which is exactly what you'd predict for plants that can least afford to shut their leaves. I should be straight with you, that result is contested. In 2017, another team published a response in the same journal arguing the evidence for genuine habituation wasn't strong enough. That fight is still live, which brings us to the sound. In March 2023, a team led by Lila Kadani at Tel Aviv University published in the journal Cell. They put tomato and tobacco plants in a soundproof box with ultrasonic microphones. Stressed plants, cut or left unwatered, emitted popping clicks in the 40 to 80 kilohertz range, far above the ceiling of human hearing. A drought stressed tomato produced roughly 30 to 50 clicks an hour, an unstressed one less than one. The sounds were airborne, detectable from over a meter away, and a machine learning model could tell from the sound alone whether a plant was thirsty or wounded. The room you're sitting in, if there's a plant in it, may not be silent. You're just built wrong to hear it. So, after all of that, do they feel it? The most honest answer science has is no, and the reason is anatomy. Pain is not damage. Pain is the experience of damage. Biologists separate nociception, the detection of harm, from pain, the awfulness of it. Nociception is a signal. Pain requires a sufferer. And to have a sufferer, you need the hardware, specialized pain receptors, nerves to carry it, and a brain to assemble the whole thing into something that hurts. Plants have none of it, no neurons, no synapses, no brain. Nothing resembling the machinery every animal we're confident can suffer is known to have. In 2019, plant physiologist Lincoln Taves and his colleagues laid this out in Trends in Plant Science, arguing the likelihood that plants are conscious is, in their words, effectively nil. And yet, in 2018, a team including František Beluška at the University of Bonn published a paper in the Annals of Botany that is genuinely hard to file away. They exposed plants to anesthetics, the same drugs used to put you under for surgery. Venus flytraps stopped closing, no matter how many times the trigger hairs were touched. Their electrical activity went flat. The action potential simply stopped. Mimosa stopped folding, pea tendrils stopped reaching, and then, about 15 minutes later, they woke back up. Worth remembering, we still do not fully understand why anesthesia works on humans either. Here's the reframe: plants may not have pain because they never needed it. Pain is a system built for animals that can run. It exists to rip your hand off a stove and teach you to never touch it again. A tree cannot run. A tree's answer to being eaten is chemistry, communication, and regrowth. A plant can lose 90% of its body and keep living, an injury that would kill any animal outright. Escape was never the plan. We even named them for being alive and then forgot. The word vegetable comes from the Latin vegetare, to enliven, from vegetus, meaning vigorous, active, alive, the same root that gives us the word vigor. For centuries, vegetable simply meant capable of life and growth. We turned it into a word for a thing on a plate, and eventually into an insult for a body with nobody home. So, no, the salad in your fridge is not suffering, but it is not furniture either. You flinch. It floods its whole body with calcium at a millimeter a second. You cry out at a pitch the room can hear. It clicks at 50 kilohertz into a world built to ignore it. You remember the thing that hurt you. It remembers the drop, a month later in the dark. You warn the people you love. It warns a tree 50 yards downwind, and that tree believes it. We drew the line around a nervous system, called everything on the other side of it insensible, and never noticed we were the ones holding the pen. The next time you cut the grass and that sharp green smell comes rolling up at you, you'll know exactly what it is. It isn't summer, it's a message. It was just never addressed to you.